Hey guys, this is OCB Communications, and welcome to my review of Dragnet. Dun 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 dun. I don't actually have the film separately. I only have it in this 3-pack of Tom Hanks movies: The Money Pit, The Burbs, and Dragnet. Dragnet is one of my favorite comedies from the 80s. Is it particularly one of the funniest comedies of the 80s? No, but it's a lot of fun to watch. And I find it incredibly underrated. Barely nobody talks about this movie when they talk about 80s comedies. And not only that, I think it's one of the best television adaptations out there. It's an adaptation of a TV show, Dragnet, which is really popular, I think, in the 50s or 60s. I'm not that familiar with the show because I didn't grow up with it like a lot of the people did when they saw this in the 80s. This film came out in 1987. It was a big hit. Dragnet was actually a really big hit. It made $20 million and it made $66 million worldwide, and it grossed $57.4 million domestically on a $20 million budget. So it made money, and enough that they were considering possibly making a sequel, but that never really came to fruition, sadly. The reason why I really enjoyed the film is because for two reasons. Dan Aykroyd and Tom Hanks. Dan Aykroyd and Tom Hanks are great together. They have great chemistry in this movie as Joe Friday and Pep Streebek. Dan Aykroyd plays Joe Friday, who is I think he's the nephew of the original Friday, Sergeant Friday in the original series, in the TV show. That's the character. For fans of the show, it really does throw in a lot of nice homages and tributes to the original show. You have characters. In real life, Dan Aykroyd is a huge fan of Jack Webb, who played the original Joe Friday. And as a tribute to him, Aykroyd gives many of his characters the ability to spit out complex technical jargon the way Joe Friday recites laws and police procedures. So a lot like Ray Stan's, lines in Ghostbusters, Elwood Blues' lines when he describes the specifications of the Bluesmobile and the Blues Brothers. He also did explain the function of the anti-aircraft gun like that in 1941 with his character. And you could actually have a lot of nice little references to the show. Like in the film, there's a photograph of Captain Gannon's wife behind his desk, and it is the same photograph as Colonel Potter's wife in MASH. And both parts were played by Harry Morgan, who plays Captain Gannon in this film. And Harry Morgan was also in. He played Bill Gannon in the show. He played twice before in the Dragnet shows, in the telemovie Dragnet, 1966, and which was actually came out in 1969, and in the second Dragnet TV series, 1967. So he had played one. I think he played Joe Friday's partner in that show. The film is the fifth of seven film and television installments of Dragnet after its original appearance on NBC Radio in 1949. Previously, there had been two television series, one in the 1950s, Dragnet, and one in the 1960s and 70s, Dragnet in 1967, and two features, one a 1950s cinema movie called Dragnet in 1954, and the other a 1960s telemovie, Dragnet in 1966 and 1969. After this 1987 movie, there have been two more TV series, one in the 1980s and the 1990s, Dragnet in 1989, and one in the 2000s, Dragnet in 2003, which did not go over well. I vaguely remember seeing trailers for that. That's the one where Ed O'Neill played Joe Friday in it. This is what Dan Aykroyd said about Dragnet. I believe that good comedy should have a base in realism. I think that's part of why the Dragnet show lends itself so well to a comedic interpretation. It also had a very recognizable style. So we've got more here than simply my doing the character of Joe Friday. And then this is more about Dan Aykroyd talking about the character of Joe Friday. I've had a fascination with Joe Friday since I was a kid. Next to Clouseau, he's the most famous cop in the world. I've studied his speech inflections, his mannerisms, his walk, and during filming I listened to tapes of the old shows. I even started dreaming in character. If there ever was a character I'd always wanted to play, it was this. I'm a huge fan of Jack Webb's. I basically just love everything he did. Dragnet was something that I always wanted to do, but I never thought when the opportunity would come up because I didn't know who owned the rights to the idea. And when Universal called and said they were interested in doing it, I think I made a deal to write the script the next week. So Dan Aykroyd was very passionate about this role, and it really shows. He really is having a blast playing this character. Um, Here's some more links to the classic TV series that are in the film. There's a cameo by Harry Morgan, and a photo of Jack Webb is visible in one scene. And Morgan was originally going to be in one scene only, but asked for a bigger part, and he was made the captain, as well as the closing credits theme of the original series played towards the end of the film. And another nod to the series, when Joe Friday first sits down at his desk, we see a pack of Chesterfield cigarettes on top of the newspaper. Chesterfield was a sponsor of the Dragnet radio series, and the original Joe Friday, Jack Webb, used to participate in Chesterfield ads during the live radio broadcasts. And I guess Albert Brooks was offered the role of Pep Streebek that eventually went to Tom Hanks. And I'm glad, I don't mind Albert Brooks, but I just couldn't see that working. And I'm really glad that Tom Hanks took the role. And this is actually one of my, probably one of my favorite Tom Hanks and one of my favorite Dan Aykroyd movies. I just have a lot of fun with this movie. I think it's also because I grew up with this film. I caught it on cable one day, and I really had a lot of fun with it. And I never heard of the show before, so the show it was based on, I just really enjoyed the movie. And it gets a 5.9 on IMDb. I think that's way too low. It had like a 46% of Rotten Tomatoes. I think that's too low as well. I mean, is it the most perfect movie? No. Is it the funniest comedy of the 80s? No. But it's a lot of fun. That's the whole thing. It's very entertaining and has two great leads. And I thought the story was kind of fun, was funny. The whole idea with the pagans, and the directing by Tom Mankiewicz, this was his directorial debut, I believe. I thought it was pretty solid. And anyway, the film, it's directed, by Tom Mankiewicz, his directorial debut. Um, I thought he did a really good job. He was really best known for being a writer. He wrote Diamonds Are Forever. He wrote Live and Let Die. He wrote The Man with the Golden Gun. He wrote The Cassandra Crossing. He had an uncredited rewrite in Superman. Uncredited rewrite in Superman 2. He wrote the screenplay for Lady Hawk. So yeah, he was most well known for writing some Bond movies. And the first film he directed was Dragnet. And then he went on to do Delirious with John Candy, which I think is another underrated comedy. And I thought that was a lot of fun. And then he just directed some movie called Taking the Heat in 1991. It was like a TV movie in 1993, Taking the Heat. It was a thriller with Tony Goldwyn and Lynn Whitfield. Tony Goldwyn actually played a good guy in this instead of a villain. And he played a cop, which is an interesting bit of casting. And then that was pretty much it. He did that, and then he did a Heart to Heart Till Death Do Us Part reunion movie, and then he sadly passed away in 2010 on July 30th. So may Tom Mankiewicz rest in peace, because I thought I think he deserved a little bit more. I mean, Dragnet was a hit, so I don't understand why he didn't get another job until Delirious, and I think that came out in 1991, I think. So I think that's kind of lame that it took so long to get him another, chance to direct a movie, because it's not like Dragnet was a flop. Dragnet was a hit. The film's written by Dan Aykroyd, Alan Zwiebel, and Tom Mankiewicz also helped with the screenplay. Alan Zwiebel worked with, I believe Alan Zwiebel, he's worked on SNL. It sounds really familiar. I think he worked on SNL. He wrote North, which is a horrible movie. Yeah, he worked on SNL for the 5 years of the original cast, and so that's what he's pretty much well known for, not for writing North. But that movie was fucking awful. That was a terrible screenplay. It's got a score by Ira Newborn. I thought was pretty good. Ira Newborn is a composer who He did the score for Blues Brothers. Did the score for the TV show SCTV revival in the 80s. He did the score for Weird Science, Ferris Bueller's Day Off, Planes, Trains, and Automobiles. Another score I like. Um, Uncle Buck. He did the score for. I guess he worked on some music for Tales from the Crypt. Um, did the score for Ace Ventura. A score for Amazon Woman in the Moon. So yeah, so he's done a decent amount of scores that are fairly, people, from pretty popular movies. And so the film stars Dan Aykroyd as Sergeant Joe Friday, Tom Hanks as Detective Pep Streebek, not Pet. Pet, yeah, that's a name for it. Christopher Plummer is Reverend Jonathan Worley, who's pretty much the bad guy in this film, and Christopher Plummer was great in this. Just by his laugh, you knew this guy was nuts. It was a really good performance, I thought, and he had a good amount of fun with it too. Harry Morgan as Captain Bill Gannon, Alexandra Paul as Connie Swale, who eventually becomes the love interest of the film for Dan Aykroyd, for Joe Friday, which I thought was really interesting, is that instead of being having Tom Hanks' character, the young guy, have the love interest, they had the older guy have the love interest in the film. And probably because Dan Aykroyd was the bigger star at this point in time in his career. But I just thought that was interesting, to have that sort of dynamic instead of the young guy and the young girl. Instead, it's the older guy and the younger girl. And I thought that was a different sort of take on, the type of romance that goes on in these type of movies. And that helped the film also have a little bit of, helped it become even more unique. And before this, she was in Christine. She played Leigh Cabot, the girlfriend of, I believe she was the girlfriend of, yeah, she was the girlfriend of John Stockwell. And I think she was a friend to Keith Gordon. And she was also in American Flyers, and she was in 8 Million Ways to Die with Jeff Bridges. And then after Dragnet, she really didn't do that much, which is really too bad. She had an uncredited role as a chief's wife in Cuffs with Christian Slater. She was in the crappy remake of Piranha in 1995. She was in Spy Hard as the woman in the Murphy bed. And she was in the Cyber Bandits, that awful piece of shit, as Rebecca Snow. So she's had a lot of work on TV lately and direct-to-video stuff, but yeah, her career didn't really take off, so to speak, after Dragnet or even after Christine. So you have Alexandra Paul as Connie Swale, and you have Jack O'Halloran, who played Non in Superman 2 as Emil Muzz, who's one of the big heavies for the Pagan group, which is the group of villains headed by Jonathan Worley, played by Christopher Plummer. And you have a few other actors. Elizabeth Ashley as Commissioner Jane Kirkpatrick. Dabney Coleman as Jerry Caesar, who's pretty much this film's version of Hugh Hefner. It's pretty much he's the owner of. It's not a play. It's not Playboy magazine. It's a. I think it's Playpen. I think that's what it is. I think it's Playpen. Or no, it's something. Bait. It's called Bait. It's not Playboy. It's called Bait. And so he's pretty much this film's Hugh Hefner. And Kathleen Freeman is also in it as Enid Borden in a fun scene. Kathleen Freeman was in. She's been in a lot of stuff. She was in Inner Space. She played the woman with the red hair in the dream, the nightmare that Martin Short has, where everything that rings up is way too expensive, and she pulls out the gun and it's really lighter. That was Kathleen Freeman, and she's been in a lot of different '80s comedies as well. The script had been written by Dan Aykroyd and Alan Sweeble. Tom Mankiewicz, who had a deal with Universal, was brought in to work with them. Ted Kotcheff was originally attached to direct, but did not like to draft. So Ted Kotcheff was, once again, the guy who directed First Blood, was attached to possibly direct this. And instead, he would go on, I think, to do Switching Channels, and then he would go on to direct Weekend at Bernie's. So Aykroyd originally wanted Jim Belushi to play opposite him, but he was unavailable, and Tom Hanks was cast instead. That's interesting. And then he had the main theme of the Dragnet theme was updated by the British group Art of Noise, and it had like sound bites from the movie. And then you have the infamous the City of Crime song, which is actually a hip hop sort of pop song with raps by Dan Aykroyd and Tom Hanks, which I still like it. It's corny as hell, but I still like that song. This is the city of crime. Don't step on the line. You know, read them the rights. Read them the rights. It's so corny, but it's so cool. Anyway, just talk about the plot real quick. Now I'll talk about some quotes and some funny moments I liked in the movie. LAPD Sergeant Joe Friday's nephew and namesake, Dan Aykroyd, whose anachronistic views reflect those of his late uncle, is involuntarily assigned to a smart alecky streetwise new partner, Pep Streetback, played by Tom Hanks. Their contrasting styles clash at first, and Friday disapproving of his young partner's attitude, hair, and wardrobe, as he shows up and he's undercover. He's been undercover for so many years. It shows a motorcycle. He's got long biker hair and a bandana on and a scruffy, beard. 5 o'clock shadow. And but they eventually bond over their first case as a team, an investigation of a series of bizarre thefts involving items as disparate as a tanker full of chemicals, police, fire, and paramedic vehicles, a wedding dress, a lion's mane, and the entire monthly print of the pornographic magazine Bait. Sounds pretty random. Well, it is a lot of random stuff that happens where, there's the lion's mane gets stolen. And that was one of the fun moments I remember. Like, the kids are looking at the lion, where, the lion, there's no lion's mane, and the kids are really disappointed and sad that the lion had lost its mane when they're seeing the lion at the zoo, and Tom Hanks is like, hey, don't cry, don't worry, it'll grow back. It'll grow back. And so I thought it was, that was pretty funny. And then they followed the trail to an Orange County-based cult calling itself Pagan, People Against Goodness and Normalcy. Friday and Streetback focused on one of the cult's henchmen, a British limousine driver named Emil Muzz, played by Jack O'Halloran. Friday and Streetback disguise themselves and sneak into a secret pagan ceremony where they witnessed a masked leader attempting to sacrifice a virgin, Miss Connie Swale, played by Alexandra Paul. Friday and Streetback disrupt the ceremony and save Swale. In the process, Swale and Friday discover a mutual attraction. And I like that whole scene where they go into the pagan ceremony. It is so over the top. It's hilarious. They're wearing goat skins. They're handing out goat skins to people. There's a guy who's literally has like a carton full of, drugs and all kinds of, uppers and downers and ecstasy, what you name it. And, it's the definition of an angry mob gone mad. Like, even nuttier, because, they're dressed in goat skin pants and the sacrifice of virgin. And what really is funny is the undercover outfits that Friday and Streetback choose. So you get this hilarious image of Dan Aykroyd in a punk getup, like a punk, like a punk gang member, like a punk rocker, like a punker, and he's got like the blonde hair and the neon red mohawk. So he looks like a fucking rooster. And then he's got all this other kind of punk attire and leather and chains, and then like an earring in one ear, and you have Tom Hanks, and he's wearing a hairnet with his hair slicked back and a mustache, and wife beater. This is so absurd, and I think he's wearing fingerless gloves too. Just the image of what they choose to go undercover in is hilarious. And then they go and try to save Alexandra Paul. They run into there's a giant snake in there, like an anaconda, that the pagan stole from the zoo, and he all he has in his pockets, because he wasn't able to bring any weapons in, so all he has in his pockets is the drugs that he took from one of the guys who's handing out drugs at the pagan meeting. So he just force feeds the snake drugs, and so then the snake is like, it's writhing around trying to strangle Tom Hanks, trying to squeeze him, and then he puts in drugs in its mouth, and then Then literally it just stands up straight like this. It's moving like this, and it just slowly goes up like this. Then it just stands up straight, and then Tom Hanks is like batting it around, and it's not moving. I thought it was a pretty funny image. You know, he beat the snake with drugs, and so they end up saving Connie Swale, and that's when Friday and Swale, you know, basically start to develop a relationship. And Friday and Strebeck, you know, so then an informer tells Friday and Strebeck that a local milk factory is being used by the pagans to mass produce a toxic gas made from the chemicals they stole. Friday and Strebeck commandeer a police tank and use it for a raid on the factory, which turns out to be producing only milk, the real gas factory being next door. And I like that. I like the whole use of the police tank in this movie. It's pretty cool. And it has a fun moment where Joe Friday makes a triumphant return in the police tank, you know, to help save his partner Strebeck. And I like the whole thing where he's got this, you know, I got some, somebody's cooking something and the fire alarm and the smoke alarm's going off. But anyway, I like the whole thing where he breaks down the, you know, he's basically coming to rescue his partner because he's stuck in at the bait mansion, and all hell's breaking loose. And he breaks down the gate with the tank. He pops open, and it's Friday. And I like the line that Tom Hanks uses, and it's in the trailer. He's like, "Thank God it's Friday," and so I thought that was pretty cool. And so then Friday then invites Connie Swale to join him at a birthday dinner for his maternal grandmother, Mrs. Grace Mundy. And to Friday's chagrin, Strebeck trashes the dinner party. And at the restaurant, Connie identifies a fellow patron to televangelist Jonathan Worley, Plummer, as the pagan leader. And Worley wants to possibly get into politics, of course. He wants to become mayor. He has this really popular show that even Friday watches, which is about, you know, supposed to be what's, you know, he's the complete opposite of his true intention. You know, this show paints him as this really nice guy, and he's all about morals and everything. But the reality, he's a pagan, and he's the worst of them all. And even though Worley is a high respected community leader who is actually dining at this moment in this scene with Friday's captain, Captain Bill Gannon, Friday and Strebeck's boss, and Police Commissioner Kirkpatrick, who's also in this as well, who is a major bitch played by Elizabeth Ashley. It's a good performance by her because she was just basically asked to play a stuck-up bitch, and she did a good job. And despite Strebeck's warnings, Friday tries to arrest Worley. And that was one of the many I thought were, you know, nice moments in the film, and some really good lines I thought. And I'm just gonna find it here. So here he is. He finds Worley in the bathroom, pretty much. You know, he's right at the urinal. He's like, "Hold it right there, Worley. Police officer, you're under arrest." "I beg your pardon. What is this? Some kind of feeble joke?" "Oh, it's a real knee slapper, friend. If you consider California Penal Code Section 4A, 4207A, 597, and 217 theft, kidnapping, cruelty to animals, and attempted murder something to laugh about." "I haven't the slightest idea what you're talking about. My partner and I witnessed that little torchlight picnic you threw last night, and we're going to put you where your kind always ends up. In a 7-by-7-foot gray-green metal cage in the 15th floor of some 100-year-old penitentiary, with damp, stinking walls and a wooden plank for a bed. Sure, the city isn't perfect. We need a smut-free life for all our citizens. Cleaner streets, better schools, and a good hockey team. But the big difference between you and me, mister, is that you made the promise, and I'm going to keep it." And then I just love how everyone who's in the vicinity just starts clapping. And this doesn't end well, though, for Friday, as he actually ends up being suspended by Gannon in order to take Strebeck off the case. You know, actually, he orders Strebeck, you know, off the case, and he suspends Friday. Connie and Friday are then kidnapped by Muzz and then taken to the Griffith Observatory, which mainly when I think of Griffith Observatory, you know, in movies, I think of, you know, The Rocketeer, because they use that at the end of the film. That's where Cliff went in to meet Jenny and try to trade the rocket pack for his girlfriend. Worley then plans to use the party at Caesar's mansion to kill Caesar and the mayor using the stolen chemicals. Friday then leads a SWAT team on a raid on Caesar's mansion, and during the ensuing shootout between the pagans and the police, Worley takes Connie to the airport, where he escapes in his private Learjet. His getaway ends when the now reinstated Friday pursues him in a police jet, forcing him to return to Los Angeles and land. An epilogue reveals that Friday is still working with Strebeck and dating Connie. And that's the whole sort of, actually, the epilogue is actually the whole thing where he's like, you know, she's a virgin, right? Isn't she? And then it was the whole thing, you know, she's not a virgin anymore, is she? And then you have basically Dan Aykroyd, he doesn't even say anything. One of his eyebrows goes up, and then you're like, oh. And so I thought that was pretty funny because Aykroyd is really good at physical comedy. And but I as corny as that is, the police jet, I mean, that's so good, it's so goofy. But I thought it was awesome. I think it was all painted, you know, like police camouflage, blue and gray, and it has the sirens. You think the bad guy gets away, and then he shows up in the police jet that has like to protect and serve on the side of it, and it's got the sirens and everything. And you just like a badass. Friday's just like, he's like, the time to go down. I got you. And then there's no fighting or anything. Like the bad guy just, oh fuck it. He came in with the police jet. I'm gonna land. I'm done. I got caught. So yeah, that's the plot of Dragnet, and the climax. This is not an action-packed movie. This is more of a comedy than an action film, without a doubt. More of a comedy than an action movie. But I think what makes it work is that the two leads have chemistry. It's not like Ride Along where they don't have any chemistry. These two have good chemistry, and they're a lot of fun to watch them try to figure out the case. And the action that is there is competent. It's competent enough. And just a lot of fun moments. When Strebeck catches Muzz, and Strebeck and Friday try to interrogate him, I like the whole thing where Tom Hanks basically he's trying to get information from him no matter what. And he like has this trick where he's like, he takes, hey Muzz, your balls, this drawer. That's the whole thing. And just the whole, you don't see it, but you can hear it. You can hear Muzz reacting to this, where he, reacting to the torture that Tom Hanks is putting on this poor guy, putting his balls in a drawer and just slamming the drawer on his nuts. And it's a lot of fun moments, like where they actually, there's a moment where you have this woman who's one of these playmates, and she pulls her top off, and she's all like, do these look like the breasts of a 40-year-old woman? And Friday's like, no, ma'am. They're quite impressive. Bordering on spectacular. And then when Friday first sees Strebeck's attire, he's like, I don't care what undercover rock you crawled out from. There's a dress code for detectives in robbery homicide. Section 3605 10 20.22 24 26 50 70 80. It specifies clean shirt, short hair, tie, pressed trousers, sports jacket or suit, and leather shoes, preferably with a high shine on them. And then other kind of, I like this little moment from Worley where Friday, talks to Worley. He's like, sure, but just like every other foaming rabid psycho in the city with a foolproof plan, you've forgotten you're facing the single finest fighting force ever assembled. The Israelis? No, the Los Angeles Police Department. And then you have the whole thing where Strebeck, Friday's eating his hot dog, and he has all this stuff, all the fixings on it, and Strebeck has to ruin it for him. And he's like, you know the kinds of things that could fall into an industrial sausage press? Not excluding rodent hairs and bug excrement? And then Friday just gives him this look of disgust, and he's like, I hate you, Strebeck. And then I like this whole thing where Strebeck, he was like, what are you doing? Like Sylvia Wiss wanted him, that's the one that showed him her breasts. And he's like, are you crazy? Sylvia Wiss wanted you. Now let me tell you something, Strebeck. There are two things that clearly differentiate the human species from animals. One, we use cutlery. Two, we're capable of controlling our sexual urges. Now, you might be an exception, but don't drag me down into your private hell. You've got a lot of repressed feelings, don't you, Friday? Must be what keeps your hair up. And then the chemical engineer is describing, you know, what happened, what the chemicals could do. And he's like, basically, it burns the eyes and lungs and the throat, causes vomiting, and if continuously inhaled, death. And then Strebeck says this, you know, line to Friday. He's like, oh, sort of like your aftershave. And then they're on a multi-lane highway. Traffic is all around and passing. It's passing and sounding horns. And Strebeck's like, you know, Friday, we're allowed to go 55. On some occasions, even faster. I'm well aware of the federally mandated speed limit, Strebeck, but did it ever occur to you that by going 8 miles an hour slower, we might save some gasoline and ease the burden on the poor taxpayers out there who pay our salaries? Friday, a little extra gas isn't going to put the city in hock. Besides, it looks bad. Come on, live a little. It's the vertical pedal on the right. And then you have the whole thing where there's a little chase. They're chasing after Muzz in his limousine, and they end up on the beach. And they end up going through this. There's a bunch of like stuffed animals and stuff, and they drive through the stuffed animal display. And Friday just says this deadpan. He's like, "Look out, Muppets!" That always cracks me up. As they go through the stuffed animals, and there's like Muppets, that go on the windshield. He's like, "Look out, Muppets!" That's one you might not catch, the first time around when you see the movie. And this is the moment with Enid Borden. She was great. Friday knocks on her door, and she opens up the door, and right at the bat, she's in a bad mood. She's like, "What the hell do you want?" "Police officers, ma'am." "How time you pencil dick showed up? Why couldn't you have gotten here before that big, bad, stupid-looking piece of sewage breath stole my white wedding dress?" Sewage breath is your little nickname for Muzz. ML Muzz. Not much of an improvement. And I like this scene where Friday is talking to Caesar, Dabney Coleman. He's like, "Can you tell me how much a monthly run of your magazine is worth?" "Well, let's just say it's more money than you've ever seen in your life. And I do that every month. At least my money's clean. Tell you what you can do, Friday. Before you go home and start polishing your pennies, why don't you go out there and get my magazines back on the stands where they belong? Listen, hotshot, I'm going to tell you something right now. I don't care for you or the putrid sludge you're traveling out. But until they change the laws and put you sleaze kings out of business, my job is to help you get back your stench-ridden boxes of smut. And since I'll be doing it holding my nose, I'll be doing it with one hand." And then, like, when he first arrives to the mansion, it's just so random. It's so hilarious. They go on the mansion intercom turns on, and this woman's voice. She's like, "Oh, thank God, vibrator repair." And then Friday's like, "No, ma'am, LAPD. Sorry." It's just so funny. I thought that was hilarious. It's so random. "Hey, God, vibrator repair." And then, Dan Aykroyd just nails the deadpan. He's like, "No, ma'am, LAPD." And then, I'm looking at him just. Yeah, that's the whole thing at the end where he says, "Don't you mean the Virgin Connie Swale?" And then Friday looks at Trebek and the Dragnet theme starts. Wait a minute. And it was just pretty funny, too, Friday's narration a lot of times where they end up getting their car stolen. And this is his narration after losing their two. Then they got another car taken away, or I think it was like damaged or something. It's like, after losing the two previous vehicles we had been issued, the only car the department was willing to release to us at this point was an unmarked 1987 Yugo, a Yugoslavian import donated to the department as a test vehicle by the government of that country and reflecting the cutting edge of Serbo-Croatian technology. This is just the details are hilarious. Now, this is a whole thing where the kids are looking at the lion at the zoo. Friday's looking at the lion whose mane has been shaved into a mohawk. Somebody must have wanted that lion's mane pretty bad to pull a twisted stunt like that. Although as mohawks go, it's not that bad. It'll grow back. Yeah. And how do you tell these kids here who have never seen a lion before and probably won't have the desire to see one again? Kids, it'll grow back. And then the kids cheer. uh, and I thought this was a kind of fun exchange between Captain Gannon. After waking Captain Gannon and briefing him in the middle of the night, Friday, do you have any idea what time it is? Yes, sir. He looks at his watch, and Pep's like, oh, don't ask them that, Captain. It's 4:27 a.m., sir. He lives for that. It's in his blood. And, I like the scene where the pagans are, like, chasing after them. And they're chanting, like, kill the good, kill the good. And Friday's, like, showing his badge and them. You are all under arrest. And then they keep chanting, kill the good, kill the good. Each of you has a right to remain silent. If you waive the right to remain silent, anything you say can and will be used against you in the court of law. And Streetback's like, oh, for crying out loud. And then he pulls out his gun and he cocks it and he fires warning shots in the air, which then makes the crowd run away. And then, this one's pretty funny. Like, and he's talking about to Joe. Streetback's talking to Joe about his feelings, his feelings for Connie, and he's like, "Oh, Joe, you never had those feelings before, have you?" Almost. I had a kitten once. Yeah, it's gonna be a little different. Connie's not gonna be sleeping in a box or meowing all night or clawing up your drapes, or maybe she will. I mean, you're both kind of starting from scratch with this. So anyway, that's pretty much Dragnet. There's another fun scene I liked where you have this moment where Dan Aykroyd's character gets to show that he can hold his own. These guys try to mug him. He's like, not tonight. Then he like kicks their asses. I thought it was pretty well choreographed. And at the end of the day, it's a fun flick. Yeah, I think it's underrated. I don't think enough people talk about Dragnet. If you're a fan of Tom Hanks and Dan Aykroyd, I highly recommend it. If you like 80s buddy cop movies, you should check it out. It might not be everybody's cup of tea. A lot of people might not even find it to be that great. And I can see why people don't think it's that impressive. But for me personally, I found it to be a lot of fun, and that's pretty much what I want out of my movies is to be entertained. And I thought this movie did a great job with that, with great chemistry between the two leads, Dan Aykroyd and Tom Hanks. And I'll say it right here, I miss this Tom Hanks. I miss that Tom Hanks. I miss the Tom Hanks who's the funny normal guy, the funny everyday normal guy. And it seems like after he won some Oscars, he just seems to be a little bit more of a serious actor now. And I miss that. I miss the funny Tom Hanks. And The Lady Killers doesn't count. I would love to see him do a comedy like The Money Pit or The Burbs again. That'd be great. But anyway, that's my review of Dragnet, and I really don't know what to say because I would rate it at 5 stars. I'm gonna give it 4. Actually, I'm gonna give it 4.5 because I really don't have to find that many problems with it. I really enjoy the movie, and I think maybe a little bit more action. Even that's probably not what its point is, but maybe a little bit more, and maybe a teeny bit more laughs. But as it is, there's a few chuckles here and there, and it just goes by at a quick pace, and it's just a really fun movie. And that's pretty much more. That's all I wanted out of a film, especially a comedy. It's just a good time, and I think Dragnet is a good time. So anyway, folks, thanks for watching my review of Dragnet, and I will see you guys later. See ya.